have a new story. Tonight I have a new story. The Whisper from Room 13. Three years ago, a man named David accepted a night shift security job at an abandoned hospital. The pay was strangely high. The manager looked nervous when he handed David the keys. There is only one rule, he said. Never enter room 13 after midnight. David laughed. The manager didn't. At 11:58 p.m., the hospital was silent. No patients, no doctors. Just endless dark hallways. But David heard a knock. At exactly a.m. Just endless dark hallways. At exactly 12 a.m., David heard a knock. Knock, knock. It came from room 13. He checked the security monitor. The room was empty. Then another knock echoed through the hallway. Louder this time. Bang, bang. David felt his stomach tighten. The camera still showed nothing. Suddenly, a woman's voice crackled through his radio. Weak whispering. Please let me out. David nearly dropped the radio. There were no other employees in the building. The voice came again. Coming back! He's coming back! The signal died. Static filled the room. Then every security camera turned black. One by one. Until only camera 13 remained. David stared at the screen. The room was no longer empty. Someone was standing in the corner. The wall. Facing the wall. Not moving. The timestamp on the camera. Was 12:13 a.m. Then the figure slowly turned its head. Not toward the camera. Toward David. As if it knew he was watching. The monitor suddenly displayed a message. Look behind you. David's blood ran cold. Because at that exact moment he heard breathing. Right behind his chair. David froze. The breathing behind him was slow. Heavy. Too close. He didn't want to turn around. Every instinct told him to run. But curiosity won. Slowly, David looked over his shoulder. Nothing. The room was empty. The room was empty. Breathing stopped. For a moment, he thought he had imagined it. Then his radio crackled again. A burst of static. Followed by a whisper. Don't look at the cameras. David's eyes immediately moved to the monitors. Too late. Camera 13 was showing something new. The figure was gone. But another person stood in the room now. A little girl. Barefoot. Barefoot. Wearing a hospital gown. Her face hidden by long black hair. She stood perfectly still. Then she pointed directly at the camera. At David. The lights in the security office flickered. Once. Twice. Times. 3 times. When the lights stabilized, the girl was no longer in the monitor. David felt a chill run through his body. A sound echoed down the hallway outside. Tap, 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 tap. Like bare feet walking across the floor. The sound was getting closer. Tap, 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 tap. Closer. David locked the office door. The footsteps continued. Slow, steady, until they stopped directly outside. Silence. Full minute passed. Nothing happened. Then came a small knock. Knock, knock, knock. David stared at the door. His heart pounding. Tum, 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 tum. A child's voice spoke from the other side. Softly, almost sweet. David. His eyes widened. Nobody in the hospital should know his name. Voice spoke again. David, don't let him find me. Then the hallway erupted with a deafening scream. Not a child's scream. A man's angry, inhumane. The building shook. Every monitor flashed white. And when the screens came back, camera 13 showed the little girl again. This time she wasn't alone. A tall shadow stood behind her. And written across the wall in what looked like blood were 6 terrifying words. He is already inside with you. What David discovered next would haunt him for the rest of his life. Because the shadow on the camera 13 wasn't standing behind the little girl anymore. It was standing behind him. David slowly turned around. Nothing. The office was empty. But when he looked back at the monitor, the shadow was gone. The little girl was staring directly into the camera. Then she mouthed 3 words. Check the door. David's heart pounding. Slowly he looked toward the office door. First, everything seemed normal. Then he noticed something. A wet footprint. Just outside the door. Then another. And another. As if someone had been standing there for a long time. Watching. Thing. David grabbed his flashlight. The radio suddenly crackled. The woman's voice returned, more desperate than before. If you hear knocking, static, calls your name. Someone calls your name. Static, answer. Do not answer. The transmission cut off. At that exact moment, knock, knock, knock. The sound came from inside the office, not outside. Inside. David spun around. The room. The room was empty. Excuse me. Knock, knock, knock. This time, it came from beneath his desk. David's hands began to shake. Slowly, slowly. Flashlight. Lowered the flashlight. The beam illuminated the darkness under the desk. Nothing. Just empty space. Relieved, he stood up. He noticed something that made his blood freeze. A message had appeared on a sheet of paper lying on the desk. He was certain it hadn't been there before. Written in shaky handwriting were the words, "I found you." Suddenly, all the monitors switched at once. The camera in the hospital displayed the same image. David standing in the security office, being watched from behind. A tall black figure stood only inches away from him. Its face was hidden. Its smile was not. And then, for the first time all night, David felt a cold hand touch his shoulder. David never forgot what happened when he turned around. Because the thing touching his shoulder wasn't there, wasn't there, wasn't there. The office was empty. Yet he could still feel icy fingers pressing into his skin. The monitor suddenly exploded with static. It filled the room. The screech filled the room. Then every screen displayed a single sentence. You should have left at midnight. David stumbled backward. Light slipped from his hand. His flashlight slipped from his hand. The moment it hit the floor, the hospital went completely dark. Not dim, not shadowy, dark. The kind of darkness that feels alive. Then came a sound. A child crying somewhere down the hallway, soft, broken. Begging for help, please. The voice trembled. Coming. He's coming. No, David knew he should stay inside the office. But something felt wrong. The little girl sounded terrified. Against his better judgment, he opened the door. The hallway was empty. The crying stopped instantly. Silence. Then a red exit sign flickered at the far end of the corridor. Underneath it stood the little girl. Motionless. Less. Motionless. Her face is still hidden behind strands of black hair. She slowly raised one arm and pointed toward room 13. First time all night. The door to room 13 was open. Only a few inches. Darkness deeper than the hallway spilled from inside. The girl's voice echoed through the corridor. He's awake. The lights above David began turning off. The one. one by one. The far end of the hall. Dark, dark, dark. Each light died as something moved beneath it. Think closer. Think closer. David couldn't see what it was. Only its shadow. And it was moving far too fast. The lights continued shutting off. 10 meters away. 8642. The final light above David flickered. For a split second. He saw a towering figure sprinting toward him on all fours. Everything went black. And in the darkness, something whispered directly into his ear. I've been waiting for you, David. What David heard next was far more terrifying than the whisper. Because after the voice said, for you, David, it laughed not loudly, not wildly. It was a quiet, raspy chuckle. As if it already knew how this story would end. David couldn't move. The space around him felt heavy. Almost solid. Without warning, the emergency lights flickered back on. The hallway was empty. The hallway was empty. No creature, no girl. A little girl, nothing. Except for a trail of wet footprints. Leading directly into room 13. Open. The door stood wide open. First time that night. The first time that night. Time. 4. Time. And something inside was humming. Lullaby. A lullaby. The same lullaby his mother used to sing when he was a child. David's blood turned cold. Nobody in this hospital should know that song. There it was. coming from room 13. Slowly, patiently, waiting. You on David's bell suddenly crackled. You on David's bell suddenly crackled. The woman's voice returned. Barely audible. Not go inside. You must not go inside. Static. No matter what you hear. Static. No matter what you see. The transmission ended. David stared at the footprints. Then he noticed something else. They weren't only going into the room. Another set of footprints was coming out. Huge footprints. Are larger than any humans. Are larger than any humans. Are larger than any humans. And they were fresh. As if whatever made them had just left. On him, David turned. The office door at the end of the corridor slammed shut by itself. Then another door slammed. And another. And another. Boom. Boom. Every door in the hospital began closing. One after another. Like something was locking the building down. The humming from room 13 stopped. Silence. From inside, a familiar voice. David's voice. Help me! Bruce. Bruce. David, Bruce. Voice came again. exactly like his own. His own. Exactly like his own. I'm trapped. And appear. A trembling hand appeared around the edge of the doorway. Then unarmed. Then a face. David stepped backward in horror. Standing inside room 13 was David. Same face, same clothes. Same terrified expressions. The cabby looked directly at him and whispered, "If I'm in here," it smiled. Smiled far too wide to be human. And who's standing out there? And shattered everything, David. If I'm the cabby titled its head. Standing out there. A moment. For a moment. Neither of them move. They simply stare at each other. Simply. Same face, same eyes, same fear. Then the cabby smiled. It realized something horrifying. The thing inside room 13 wasn't copying him. It was copying his memories. The copy spoke first. By thinking about it leaving, David froze. That was exactly what he had been thinking. Thinking. Happy smiled wider. You always run when you're scared. The words hit like a punch. Because they were true. Then the copy said something nobody else should have known. And not a family member, nobody. Secret. A secret David had never told anyone. His face went pale, the thing laughed. It knew everything. Lights flickered, and suddenly the little girl appeared beside the copy, standing silently, her head lowered. The copy placed one hand on her shoulder. The girl began to tremble, whispered. He whispered. The girl whispered, please don't listen to him. Frost spread across the walls. Emergency lights dim. The girl looked directly at David for the first time. And he finally saw her face. David wished he hadn't. Her eyes were completely black. Tears of dark liquid ran down her cheeks. Yet she looked terrified, not of David, of the thing standing beside her. She screamed. He screamed. And she screamed. Run! Run! Every light in the corridor exploded. Glass rained from the ceiling. The cabin let out a roar so loud it shook the walls. The hospital began to tremble. Doors burst open throughout the building. Alarms started blaring. And from every hallway, footsteps, hundreds of them, running toward David. Not one pair, not 10, hundreds. As if the entire hospital had suddenly awakened. Turn and ran, the footsteps followed. Closer, closer, closer. Then while spinning through the darkness, his flashlight beam landed on an old hospital map hanging on the wall. Someone had written a message across it in red letters. Room 13 is not a room. David stopped. His heart nearly stopped with him. Because underneath that message was another. One that explained everything. It had been impossible. It read, "13 is a door. 13 13 is a door. Room 13 is a door. David's heart nearly stopped when he read the message. Room 13 is a door. A room. A room. A room. Not a room. Or a door. But a door to what? Think further. Or he could think further. Would crash echoed behind him. The footstep had stopped. Every single one. Silence that followed was worse. Much worse. Because now something was breathing. One thing very close. David slowly turned his flashlight toward the corridor. Nothing. Then the beam landed on the ceiling and he saw it. A pale figure clinging upside down above him. Wings bent at impossible angles. Its mouth stretched from ear to ear. And its black eyes were locked onto him. The creature dropped. David groaned. The thing hit the floor with a sickening crack and chased after him. Its hands slapped against the tiles. Fast. Too fast. The hospital corridor twisted endlessly. Left, right, left, right. David had no idea where he was anymore. Then he saw a metal door marked Archives. He threw it open and rushed inside. The creature slammed into the door a second later. Bang! The handle rattled violently. Bang! Bang! Dust filled the air. Old shelves lined the room. Thousands of forgotten records. Then David noticed a single file lying on a desk. and had left it there for him. On the cover, there were three words: Project Room 13. David opened it. First page contained a photograph. His photograph. His hands began shaking. The photo had been taken 3 years ago. Before he ever worked at a hospital. Before he even knew the building existed. The next page revealed dozen more photographs. Child at school, at home, sleeping. Someone had been watching him his entire life. Then he reached the finals page. Handwritten note. The one sentence. He felt sick as he read it. Subject successfully returned. Returned, not selected, not chosen. As if David had belonged here once. As if inside room 13. The light suddenly died. The room plunged into darkness. Then a familiar voice spoke beside his ear. Not a monster, not a girl, not a woman from the radio. It was David's own voice. Whispering. Where do you? Remember, do you? Don't remember, do you? Apples. Then the voice said, one thing that terrified him more than David. You never left room 13. Or David finally opened the last door. On the other side was the security office. The clock read 10:58 p.m. His first night. His first night had just begun. The little bear smiled. Thank you for taking my place. Room 13 closed. David's screams echoed inside. Thank you for listening my stories. Have a good night, everyone. Stay safe.